What's up guys, this is FlamingVictini and this is my round 2 match against Leftiez for OLT2. Now let's just jump right into this replay. I'm going to be bringing an alt zone team and Leftiez has a nice balanced Mega Alakazam team. Now his team looks really threatening because the Alakazam one is a threat, especially if he gets up rocks and my AV Torn can't check it super well. But I do have another countermeasure against it that I won't tell you about right now. He also has this Azumarill, which I have 0 switch-ins for, and something I did not account for in my turn 1, but my only real way I can see of winning this is making progress is if I can win with my Altaria. That is easily the biggest threat to his team because I do have the magnezone to trap his Ferrothorn, and if I'm able to trap his Ferrothorn, then theoretically my Altaria can win. But what a lot of people did not realize is that my Altaria does not even have Earthquake. It is actually a Cotton Guard Dragon Dance Altaria. So although my Altaria in regular form can force out the Heatran, which I'm going to use later on in the game to my advantage, it has like little to no offensive presence, so I have to play my Altaria and my Magnezone extremely well if I want to have a shot at playing this game. So I lead off with my Latios, expecting him to lead off with his Garchomp or maybe his Heatran, as he actually leads off with his Azumarill, and this was I think a mistake on my part leading Latios, because I have like 0 switch-ins for Azumarill, so I should have definitely not led with something that forces us out. I considered going for the Psyshock just to get off huge damage against this, but I figured it would definitely not be worth it because this Latios is going to be very important later on in the game. So I actually switch out into my Landorus T, realizing that he probably won't Waterfall, so he can take Rocky Helmet damage as he goes for the knockoff or the Play Rough. He actually goes for the knockoff and gets a crit based on the damage that is definitely Assault Vest. Here I go for the Earthquake rather than the Stealth Rocks, because I realized that the damage on Azumarill is much more important than the chip damage from the Stealth Rocks, because this thing is a huge threat, and I think without the crit, he wouldn't have been able to KO me with that plus Waterfall, but he actually goes for the Waterfall and gets another crit here. So my Lando T goes down, but I do end up getting that damage on Azumarill, and I go back into my Latios, and I go for the Psyshock. Now, I did not think he would go into his Ferrothorn. I actually thought he would go into his Heatran, but because I was thinking that this was a Spiker and that Heatran was his Rocker, this Ferrothorn is actually his Rocker, not the Heatran. So I don't have HP Fire on this, and I'm gonna make a very obvious play and go into my Magnezone. Now, I kind of made this play thinking that Leftiez would realize how important his Ferrothorn is, and I actually should have realized this, but Heatran would seem like a perfectly fine play to him because it would account for HP Fire Latios, and also Heatran does walls Latios pretty well generally, and it also beats the Magnezone switch. And I was trying to catch him over predicting for me to not go to my Magnezone and stay in with my Latios and double Psyshock, but Heatran was a perfectly fine play for him because that play covered for 2 different things I could have done, whereas my play was kind of just like trying to catch him to over predict when he had no reason to do that. He kind of could have just made this, and I could have actually punished this with my Latios, but that was definitely too risky, and I was trying to play my Latios. I do have Earthquake on the Latios, so I could have punished that switch, but I think I was trying to play like Latios in a way that he would not suspect Earthquake on the Latios, and that does, I think, help later on. So I go into my Keldeo here as he goes for the Lava Plume on his Heatran. So I'm still at this point thinking that the Heatran is defensive and that Ferrothorn is like a Spiker and this is a Rocker, especially since I saw a Lava Plume and not Magnezone or something. And so here, I don't really feel like switching out, so I just go for the Scald. This is a Life Orb Rest Talk Keldeo as he goes into his Latios, and I switch into my AV Torn, expecting to take this much better, but this is actually a Choice Specs Latios, so that actually does a lot more than I expected, but I am still able to take the hit with my Torn. So expecting the switch to Garchomp, I do go for the Hurricane, and I do get a critical hit, which is actually very helpful because I can 2 KO this Garchomp. Now, I wanted to predict the switch right here out of the Garchomp, but I felt it was a little bit too risky. But in retrospect, it definitely would have helped me out to go for the U-turn or the knockoff here. So he actually goes into the Heatran as I missed the Hurricane. And this is where I think I screwed up. I went for the U-turn right here, just to like switch out into like my Keldeo. But there was no reason why I shouldn't have hard switch, because if this was like a defensive leftovers Tran like I expected, that U-turn damage would be completely useless, and I'd be going into my Keld anyway. Also, the other thing is if he went into his Garchomp expecting like a knockoff U-turn or superpower, that would have been extremely troublesome for my Tauren, whereas Keld is perfectly fine against Garchomp. And the other thing is what happens. He's actually a Scarf Tran. Scarf Lava Plume definitely caught me off guard, and he's able to knock me off right here. So I go into my Altaria, and I try to predict the Ferrothorn, although I kind of did expect him that he might try to sack his Garchomp instead. And so I go into my Altaria and I double out. I need to keep this non-Mega Evolved so I can keep on forcing switches in the Heatran. So I go into my Magnezone on the Garchomp. And here I just try to make a really aggressive play. I am not actually Choice Scarf, so I could not have outsped the Garchomp, but he makes a good switch into his Heatran because it kind of accounts for me like switching out or something like that. And it does perfectly fine if I am Scarf and I go for the Flash Cannon. Just the way I played this, the last time I brought this in was against his own Heatran, and I did hard switch because I guess that would not have seemed peculiar to him because he was Scarf Tran, and also because he had Garchomp in the back, so I wouldn't want to risk him going into his Garchomp by a Volt Switch. So I guess I could have kept on playing the bluff as a Scarf Magnezone, which is why he would have gone into his Heatran and not like sacked his Chomp prematurely. So yeah, I go for the Flash Cannon there, and I switch out into my Altaria. As he goes for the Lava Plume, does not get a burn, which means less chip damage. I do have Natural Cure, and I'm not Mega Evolving, but he goes into his Garchomp, and I expect the Garchomp here, and double into my Latios. It's not going to help me to try to stay in with my Altaria, because I don't think a +1 non-Mega return will kill the Garchomp, plus I'll just take a lot of extra damage, and I don't think it'll kill. And I need to like kind of dictate the flow of this game. So by going to Latios, I expect the Azumarill sack here because he does have both the steals. He doesn't want to risk his Ferrothorn. He wants to risk his Ferrothorn as little as possible at this point, just to stop my Altaria and not get trapped by Magnezone. And going into Heatran might be a little risky because it's Scarf, so I could get off a big hit on it with like not just like a Draco or Psyshock, but if I have Earthquake, although I don't think he was expecting that at this point in the game. And his Azumarill is kind of losing its value, doesn't really do much anymore in this game, so he has no reason not to sack it. So he just sacks his Azumarill, and he goes into his Alakazam, and this is the biggest threat to my team at this point. If he goes for the Calm Mind, I kind of should just lose. And so I switch out into my Altaria, hoping that he'll go for the Shadow Ball, and then I can take a Psychic and recover back up, because I do have some special defense. But he goes for the Calm Mind. So this game is looking like it's over, but I do still have one last chance. And I go into my Keldeo here, and sack it off so I can go into my Magnezone. And I make these series of plays very confidently, because I know this is exactly what I have to do if I want to try to win. Now, Lefty's best play here at this point is easily to just Shadow Ball twice. Like, even if you're afraid about like Focus Blast Mist, what am I gonna do to the Alakazam? That's what I would be thinking at least. So he could just Shadow Ball twice. But just the way I brought it in, like what if I'm Custap, Explosion, or something like that? He doesn't want to lose his Alakazam, which just clean sweeps my team. Even without the Calm Mind, it is a huge threat to my team. And he has so many members left, he doesn't want to like risk some Altaria stuff. So. And also, the other thing is, if he does, so I think his best play was to go for the Shadow Ball right here. For me, my best play, I think, was Flash Cannon. And now, I'll tell you, I guess I have to explain my set right now. I am a Chople Berry Thunder Wave set, which is meant to like take on Alakazam and also Gardevoir. Now, if he stays in and I go for the Thunder Wave, I'm not going to win the game regardless, even though I can stop the Alakazam, because my Altaria has Facade, it can't OHKO this Alakazam. But I'll be able to get off damage, and then finish it off with the Altaria, but I'll still lose, I'll be forced to Mega Evolve, etc. So it's just not going to work out for me. So I need to hope that he feels the need to play quote-unquote safer, and switch out his Alakazam. And so knowing that, I actually go for the Flash Cannon, expecting him to go to his Garchomp actually. But because he seems like my Magnezone is choiced or some sorts, and like Leftiez doesn't want to risk a Focus Blast, like he goes into his Ferrothorn, and I think this was definitely the worst option he had. Like, if you expect my Magnezone to be choiced, just stay in with your own Alakazam. I'm not going to really do much to you. But by going into Ferrothorn, it's like you're saying, oh, what if this is not like choice or something, and it can like take focus blast, or like if I miss or something, and then somehow kill me even though I'm a +1 SPDF. So let me go into my Ferrothorn. That's not going to help you, because Ferrothorn is only going to help you if I am a choice magnezone, and this is not a choice magnezone, so I go for the HP fire here, and I'm sure at this point Leftiez is like, oh shoot, my Ferrothorn's gone. So, but he still thinks that he has the Alakazam that's ready and safe to go. So I finish off his Ferrothorn with 2 HP fires as he goes into his Alakazam, and this is where I reveal my trump card, the Thunder Wave. So he goes for the Calm Mind, and I go for the Thunder Wave. And this is really huge, because now I can revenge this Alakazam and get off some damage as well. So I go for the Flash Cannon here as he goes for the Focus Blast, connects. You see the Chople Berry right there, and my Magnezone is taken down. Now here I go into my Latios. Now the SPDF drop definitely did help so that my Latios, so I could make this Latios play. There were a lot of things, there were a lot of ways Leftiez could have won this game, and I'll explain those ways as well. But I think my series of plays, although it was a little lucky, it was the best plays I could make if I wanted to have a shot at winning, even though this seemed like a completely lost position. So I go into my Latios here, because if I go into my Altaria, I'll be forced to Mega Evolve, and then he can just go into his Heatran and then Flash Cannon, and there's no way I'm going to win in that series. So I have to go for my Latios here and go for the Draco Meteor to knock out this Alakazam. I do get a critical hit. That would not have mattered because I did get a SPDF drop on the Alakazam. But if he did not get a SPDF drop on the Alakazam, I would have had to hope for a para or a crit. But, so I do knock it out, and he actually goes into his Heatran. Now, he could have won if he did not go to Heatran. All he needed was keep his Heatran. Now, in his point of view, my Altaria is DD, DDEQ. So in that sense, this was his best play. Because this way, if I can't KO the Heatran, I'm at -2, he can Flash Cannon twice, and then hopefully like be able to beat my Altaria 1v1 or something. But I'm not actually EQ, so my Altaria can't beat this Heatran 1v1 if he forces me to Mega Evolve. So one thing he could do is he could go to his Garchomp per se, or go to his Latios and then double to his Garchomp. And all the point of that is to force me to Draco Meteor again. I think going to Latios and then going to Garchomp would be safer, rather than going Heatran here. And by forcing me to Draco Meteor again and then bringing in his own Latios, all he risks is a Draco Meteor miss. Even if I win the speed tie, I won't be able to kill him with -4 Draco Meteor, and he will be able to basically get a kill against either Latios or Altaria. And then that way he can, if he kills off my Latios, then I'm left with my Altaria, and he can force my Altaria to Mega Evolve by spamming his Choice Specs Draco Meteor, and then winning with his Heatran. And if I sack my Altaria and go back into my Latios, then it kind of depends on whether he can get some Life Orb damage on my Latios through his Heatran and his own Latios, so that he can either try to ensure a win with like a Flash Cannon or something, or if he just wins the speed tie against my Latios. So it's kind of a little iffy actually if I do sack it, but that's only because it reached this point where I would have a chance to win with my Latios, because he allowed his Alakazam to go down like that, because he basically switched, because he allowed his Ferrothorn and his Alakazam to go down the way they did. So now that I'm done rambling, let's just continue. So he goes for the Flash Cannon, and I reveal the Earthquake and knock out his Heatran. And this basically means that my Altaria has a clean path to win the game, because now I can just Mega Evolve DD and win. So he makes the play I was talking about earlier, about going to his Latios and then doubling to his Garchomp to force the Draco Meteor from my side. So that, as you can see, if I do win the speed tie, he's able to take the hit. And he goes for the Psychic. He locks himself in the Psychic right here, hoping that he can get a crit of some sort, so I'm not very bulky and this will somehow kill. But I am especially defensive. He gets a SPDF drop, does not matter, as I go for the Facade and finish off the Latios. So yep, that was the first game, and definitely the Magnezone play, where I went for the Flash Cannon initially, and then later on, like, beat the Ferrothorn. Then when he brought back in his Alakazam, Thunder Waving it, was definitely crucial. I did get a little bit of hacks, got a little lucky, and Leftiez definitely could have played it better, especially if he was more knowledgeable about the sets on my team. But overall, I think this was a really nice game. I think it was pretty exciting for the spectators to see that Magnezone set put in some work. So I hope you guys enjoyed that game, and I'll be back with the second game. Alright guys, we're back for game 2, and looking at this team matchup, this is actually a little difficult for me, because of few reasons. One, that Ahrix is very annoying because it can come in on all the mons that are slower than it, like Breloom, Azumarill, or slightly weaken Azumarill, or Scizor, and perhaps even Garchomp, and get off a huge hit or a kill, basically. He has the Ferrothorn, which is actually really troublesome to my team because my Thundurus does lack a fighting move, and my Azumarill does not have superpower either. So that Ferrothorn is definitely annoying. The Slowking plus Heatran, good pivot combo, and definitely the Heatran stops my Scizor, which is actually a bulky SD set. The reason I'm not running offensive 3 attacks, even though that looks kind of nice, is because I thought that having a bulky pivot was more important to take on stuff like those strong fairies, and I really just love SD U-turn Scizor. Although I'm definitely going to start variating from it right now, as especially after using it for so much. I don't want to become too predictable, but SD U-turn Scizor is very nice as a Gloomon, and because it covers a ton of like huge OU threats, and it's also a very potent sweeper as well. So, and lastly, he does have the Hoopa, which can basically get a kill if I have my Alakazam in, which I think is the biggest threat to his team, basically, outside of Hoopa. And then he does have the Scarf Lando T. My Alakazam does actually have HP Ice, because I was expecting some sort of defensive Lando T or defensive Garchomp offense team. But this is actually Scarf Lando T, so that's not going to be very useful. And so overall, it's going to be a pretty tough matchup for me. But if I can get a little bit lucky with my Thundurus, perhaps, or my Breloom, or maybe even my Scizor or Alakazam get some breaks, then maybe I can come through in this game. So I'm actually not going to lead off with my Garchomp, even though because I kind of expected him to lead off with the Heracross, actually. So I do lead off with my Alakazam, as he does lead off with his Heracross. I think I should have predicted a switch here and gone for the Shadow Ball. It was really, really obvious that he was not going to stay in, but I was somehow paranoid that he would catch me over predicting and then stay in and pin this on me, which would be a godly play if I went for the Shadow Ball. So I do actually go for the Psychic right here, and that actually does a pretty good amount. I'm not sure why he would consider. I ran some calcs on the Slowking, and that's not running a ton of special defense. And if you're not going to run a ton of special defense on Slowking, I don't see much reason to use Slowking instead of Slowbro, because I think it has overall better stats if you're not going to run a physically defensive Slowking. I think it has been shown to be more useful to run a especially defensive Slowbro. You end up getting a few more stat points, and only difference, I guess, there is a move pool difference, so maybe there was a move pool difference that caused this. But I go into my Garchomp trying to expect some sort of Thunder Wave, and if he went for the Skull, and I'm like, okay, I'll get up my rocks. But he actually makes a nice double into his Heracross and goes for the Pin Missile as I go for my Stealth Rocks. Now, he did outspeed me because he had not Magna Evolved, but now that he has, I should outspeed, and I do. And I go for the Fire Blast and miss, and that's going to really suck, because that would have been some really solid damage, and it's going to become very important later on in the game. One reason I was really upset about that is because I wanted to make it safer for Alakazam to spam Shadow Ball. And by keeping that Heracross healthy, I felt more compelled to use Psychic. And he makes a very nice play here, because I probably would have gone not for the Focus Blast, which I think might have a chance to 2 KO this actually, with Life Orb and Stealth Rocks. But actually I'm not sure on that, so don't quote me on that, but I'm trying to base that on damage later on in the game. So I actually go for the Psychic as he goes into his Hoopa, and it's time for me to choose what to sack. I go into my Azumarill as he goes for the Choice Banded Hyperspace Fury. It's more than half on resist, and if I had superpower, I would have gone for it, because I need this thing gone for my Thundurus to put in some work. And alternatively, the only other way I can win is if I can somehow remove the Heatran, and then my Scizor just wins, but kind of just wins, because he has the Slowking, which forces U-turn. It's actually kind of iffy. But this is actually a really tough matchup. It's annoying. But I go for the Aqua Jet as he swings in his Ferrothorn. I don't have much to do. I go into my Breloom as he goes into his Stealth Rocks. Now this was a pretty odd play, I guess, if you look at it as a spectator. But this Breloom is supposed to have either Drain Punch, Superpower, or Focus Punch. And I think I thought I had Drain Punch, but I actually had Focus Punch. So I can't go for the Focus Punch right here, obviously. But I thought that he would realize that this is important to check my Thundurus and my Azumarill, and therefore not want to risk any damage that I could deal with this, especially the way I brought it in. I thought he would expect that the only thing I did not have to hit it was Mach Punch. So I try to expect a switch into like his Heracross and try to go for the Spore, as he actually stays in and goes for the Gyro Ball. So I'm like, okay, just screw it, I need to get damage on this Ferrothorn, so I go for the Mach Punch right here, as he goes into his Ferrothorn on that Mach Punch. So I'm like, okay, I need more damage on this Ferrothorn, I want to put it in range of Shadow Ball if I can. So I go for another Mach Punch, as Leftiez actually catches me completely off guard and goes for the Substitute. And this is why that Fire Blast miss sucked, because it not only changed my mentality of how I approach this Heracross, but it also, like, basically he gets one more kill than he should have, which could be the crucial difference between a win and a loss, although I think I would have lost this game regardless. That Fire Blast miss definitely made things very difficult for me, even like more difficult, even though they were already difficult. So that Mach Punch ends up being a misplay of sorts, as he's able to go for the Substitute. I don't get a crit on this Mach Punch, which is what I was basically hoping for, and so I have to basically sack my Azumarill right here to remove the Ferrothorn, to remove the Heracross, my bad. And he finishes me off with a close combat to not risk missing. Now here I go into my Thundurus. The reason I go into my Thundurus is because I kind of, like, it seems like the only plausible way I can win this game if I can paralyze Hoopa / Heatran, because it's actually a Scarf Heatran, so I need to paralyze that thing out and get a Stone Edge miss from the Lando T. And then that's the only way I can win. So I go for the Thunderbolt right here, and he goes into, now he sacks that and goes into his Lando T. I think maybe I should have risked it right here, that he would go for the Stone Edge and I should just go for the HP Ice. But I mean, he also does have that Ferrothorn, which is lingering. And so he goes for the Stone Edge, and he does connect as I go into my Scizor, expecting that Stone Edge, and you can see from that damage that I am defensive. I am not really defensive, but I am bulky, so I go for the U-turn right here, expecting him to switch, and trying to catch some sort of momentum, just hoping that I have some way to keep in this, as I U-turn out into my Slowking. Now right here I should have made an aggressive play and gone for the Nasty Plot, I think. Either the Nasty Plot or some double into Alakazam predicting Ferrothorn, because he didn't see much risk in going into Ferrothorn. I thought it would be risky for me to predict when he could just stand and sack this and go for the Scald. But seeing that damage from the U-turn, Scizor U-turn, I think he realized that it would have been useful to keep my Scizor in check by basically bringing in the Slowking. He has a Regenerator, and he can kind of like make me not be able to gain momentum on like a U-turn from his Heatran, some sort. So the Slowking still had use for him. So I probably should have tried to predict something right here. So I go for the Thunderbolt as he goes into his Ferrothorn on that Thunderbolt, and I go for the Thunder Wave right here. The reason I go for the Thunder Wave is because I'm just hoping. At this point, I just have to hope I have to hacks my way through. That's like the only way I could win this game, and so that's the way I'm going to try to win it. So I go for the Thunder Wave as he actually goes into his Hoopa. Now right here, I go for the Nasty Plot rather than going for 2 Thunderbolts, because the only thing 2 Thunderbolts would help me with is so that my Alakazam can KO this. But even if that happens, I'm going to lose the game. I need to get this Nasty Plot up, get a little extra leftovers, and remove this Hoopa. And then he needs to miss Stone Edge, and a lot of stuff needs to happen in my favor if I want to have a shot and win this game, and it's looking very slim. So I go for the Nasty Plot as he does not get paralyzed, and he's able to Hyperspace Fury me. So I go for the Shadow Ball right here as he does get paralyzed, so I go for the Focus Blast and finish off this Hoopa. And he just goes into his Lando T. I don't know why he says right here that I am choking, but because I am not Sash Alakazam, and so he just goes for the U-turn, finishes me up. Pretty safe play, because if I go into my Scizor, he can just go into his Heatran afterwards regardless. And he goes for the Lava Plume and finishes me off. So that was game 2. That was definitely a very tough game for me, so I'll be back with game 3. Alright guys, we're back for game 3. Now I just narrated this battle and discovered that the audio was not recording. And I also got interrupted a ton in my last 2 recordings for the last 2 games, so I'm actually really annoyed, really annoyed right now. But I don't want to leave this incomplete, and I want to get this done with. I want to show this series to you guys. So we're here with my last game. I brought Rain. Leftiez brought Sand Balance. I have Low Kick instead of Rapid Spin on my Kabutops because he has been using Ferrothorn and Heatran teams, and it turns out that he brought his Skarmory, and that really annoys me because Rapid Spin is very, very good against Skarmory matchups. Because especially Spadef Skarmory, Kabutops is good under the rain for that, and again, Rapid Spin spikes, it likes to set up on Garchomp, Scizor, and I guess if it's Spadef, and it can Iron Head force out my Torrent, I guess Torrent, I don't know. So, a lot of this game I play poorly, kind of. You'll see, I'll explain those turns where I play poorly. But I was also very paranoid of Skarmory, which affected a lot of my plays in a negative manner. So I lead off with my Skarmory, thinking not wanting to lead off with my Garchomp, and let his Skarmory get up hazards. And although Torrent just threatens his team pretty well, hugely. So I go for the knockoff on the Torrent switch, as the Leftiez switches to his Skarmory, my bad, and then taunt him on the spikes. Here I go for the Hurricane just to see if he wanted to switch out. I played this poorly because I should have definitely expected Chople Berry T-Tar. I don't know why I was not expecting Chople Berry T-Tar. And that would have been able to trap my Torrent and kill me, and I need my Torrent. Torrent is huge in this game, like it'll be very helpful for me to win. So the reason I Hurricane there to try to get this low, and the reason I did not switch the next turn, is because there was nothing that could OHKO the Skarmory at that range without the rain up. So then my only play would be to go to Politoed and then Encore, and it wouldn't really work out because he can go to his Latios, etc. So, and I didn't want to go for the Superpower on this turn because if he stays in an Iron Heads again, then my Torrent will die, and I don't want that to happen. So I actually go for the Hurricane as he goes into his T-Tar, and I miss the Hurricane, and I go for the Superpower right here, and it does not take out the T-Tar, and it's not even Chople Berry. So that Hurricane miss might seem pretty horrible for me, but Leftiez told me after the game that it was actually supposed to be a Chople Berry T-Tar, and he accidentally saved it as a Char T-Berry, so I feel kind of bad for him, and that Hurricane miss definitely made up for it, and I feel like I still, even though this wasn't Chople Berry T-Tar, I feel like I misplayed with my Torrent, which I definitely should not have done, and I do end up losing it regardless to this T-Tar, which sucks for me. So I go into my Politoed here. I make a very poor play here. I should have definitely gone for the Hypnosis, because he was switching into either his Lati, his Keldeo, or his Clef. Like, he's switching, so there's no point in just going for a random Scald. So I should have gone for the Hypnosis, but I did not. And here I think I was actually considering staying in with my Politoed, trying to catch the Skarm on a double switch, because I didn't want that to recover. And the reason was I felt safe going into Scizor, is that I did not think that HP Fire would 2 KO me. But I did not consider that it might be Choice Specs Latios, and I also did not consider that my Scizor had not yet Mega Evolved, so I think he would have had a chance to 2 KO me, so this puts me in a bad position, but everything on my team could switch into his HP Fire. So Leftiez actually makes a really nice play here and doubles into his Keldeo, expecting me to switch as I go into my Kabutops, thinking Kabutops was probably my worst option other than Politoed. I could have gone Chomp instead of Rocks, but the reason I did not do that is because I did not want the Skarm to heal up. I could have gone into Kingdra, which I think was my best option, because it still pretty much gets a kill against this team. And it's not so poor against this Keldeo matchup. And it doesn't basically, even if like he stayed into HP Fire and I get a kill with my Kabutops, then he can bring in his Keldeo anyway and get a kill, which is not favorable for me, so I don't like this Kabutops play at all. So I go for the Waterfall hoping I can flinch it, but I do not get that flinch. If I did get that flinch, things could have gone very differently, but I did not. So I go into my Kingdra and I go for the Surf to finish off that kill, to finish off, basically get a kill. As he goes into his T-Tar, and here I think I should have made an aggressive double into my Garchomp, expecting Latios. It was kind of obvious, but... And here I sack my Scizor. I think my best play here actually was to try to sack my Garchomp Sash and then try to keep my Scizor alive, because now that I look at it, I really needed that Scizor for the Clefable, because he would always be able, even if I have Rain Up, he would always be able to switch into use T-Tar to get out the sand and then go to Clefable, and then he basically just gets a kill, or he could start Calm Minding and just win the game outright. So I think, and also the Scizor, if the Extra Drill was not SD, although I think it was actually, then the Scizor could have actually potentially won if I had a chance to roost up again in an SD, and I think perhaps weaken the Keldeo a little bit more, which isn't too unreasonable as long as it takes a little, as long as I don't let it rest up, basically. So this doesn't work out for me either, so I go to my Scizor, and I also playing a little bit of this endgame, hoping that he'll miss some Trico Meteors, but that does not work out. So I go into my Politoed here, and I go for the Hypnosis as he switches into his Keldeo. Now, for whatever reason, I choose that going for 2 Solids is better than going to my Kingdra and clicking Surf. I don't know. I guess it kind of works out because then I can Hypnosis again. I guess that's what I'm thinking, but I go for the Scald here, and he finished off the kill deal as he unfortunately gets 2 Sleep Talk rolls, and he goes into his Latios, fires off a Draco. As I go to my Garchomp, I think at this point it might have been better to just stay in with Keldeo, Politoed, and tank 1 hit. I actually didn't think that I could tank a hit from Specs Latios, because I'm not specially defensive at all. But I think there's I think based on this damage from this turn, I would have. So I think if I stayed in Hypnosis, kept my Garchomp Sash, or just like not wasted that 2 turns, but then I might have had a chance because I would have been able to sleep this. But he actually gets a crit on that turn, and that basically seals the game. Even if he did not get that crit and I was able to Hypnosis that Latios, I think he would have won regardless. There were many ways he could have won at this point. So he basically sacks his T-Tar, gets up the sand, goes to his Clef so he can get off the damage against my Kingdra, and then he can win the game with his Excadrill. So that was the game. I think I could have played if I played my early game much better, then I think I could have won this game without too much trouble. But this was very well played by Leftiez, and this was definitely a very enjoyable series. So I wish him the best of luck in future rounds, and I hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys later.